Welcome now to this conversation on procurement this evening. I am Sandra Twinovidio. Now, on a number of occasions, you probably use the word procurement, or you've heard people talk about procurement. Now, this evening, we want to get the details and the nitty-gritties about what this entire term actually means. Now, we know that the government of Uganda usually spends trillions of shillings each financial year on the provision of goods, works and services to the people of Uganda. The expenditure is estimated at a total of 60% of the total national budget, which therefore reflects the strategic importance of of the procurement function in the government. It also further illustrates why the function should increasingly be considered as a critical instrument for socio-economic transformation. Now, to further streamline its procurement function, on the 1st of April 2019, the Cabinet approved the National Public Sector Procurement Policy, and that is where we actually want to start from this evening. In our studios, we do have the Commissioner of Public Procurement from the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Mr. David Shinji. A very good evening and welcome.
Thank you, moderator.
Good evening. Now, good
evening, viewers.
Yes, there is a person out there that is hearing about the National Public Procurement Policy for the very first time. What does it mean? What is the genesis of this policy?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. As I've been introduced, yes, we are here to talk about the National Public Sector Procurement Policy. One of the things that we realized is that government has many policies, but some of these policies come out and they are left hanging. People are not aware of what they're all about. Yeah. And that's why I'm here. So what is the National Public Sector Procurement all about? First of all, a policy is a statement of intent. Where do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? It's like when you're going to construct a building, you start with a plan. You can put up a building without a plan. Yeah. Yes. But a good building should need to have what? A plan. You can have a law without a policy. But a good law must have a policy, because a law must implement a policy. So, some time back in 2013, we realized that we needed to establish, to put up, to develop a National Public Sector Procurement Policy. And the genesis was from as far back as a Cabinet Directive of 2000. There's a Cabinet Minute of 2000, which directed the Minister of Finance to develop a National Public Sector Procurement Policy. Incidentally, by that time, there was no department for procurement policy. There was no department. Procurement was being handled by, at that time there was a transition. Actually, it was after the famous Kalanguka report. There's a famous Kalanguka report which reviewed public sector procurement in Uganda. Among the recommendations made was that we should have a policy to give direction to procurement. At that time, there was a Central Tender Board. By that time, there were reforms going on. That was 1997. So the second recommendation was to have a law. But as I've told you, there was no department for procurement policy. So I think at that time, they realized it was easier to start with the law other than the policy. So the law was developed. And that reform is culminated into the 2000, the PPDA Act of 2003. However, when the ministry realized that they had to set up a department for procurement, public procurement policy, when we joined the ministry, we looked in the archives and realized there was a gap. Yeah. Something had not been done. So we decided to fill that gap. There had been an omission. There was no policy. And as I've told you, you can put up a building without a plan. There are many buildings without a plan. But a good house should have a plan. A good law should have a policy. Because the policy gives the details. Why are you doing X? Where do you want to go? And why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? That's why we've had challenges, people asking us, is this procurement really helping government to develop or to save money, or it's just promoting corruption and other bad practices? Because there was a lack of a policy, which one could refer to that. What is the policy intent here? What is the policy intent here? So we set up a multidisciplinary committee composed of PPDA, the regulator, It was composed of practitioners, consultants, national consultants, and the Ministry of Finance itself. So that was Genesis. That was about in 2013. And by 2016, we had finished the exercise. The draft policy was ready. It was awaiting the approval process.
Now, you do mention something that is very important, that a good law should have a policy. That is very important. However, for the person that is watching us today, they may be saying, of what importance is this policy to me as a Ugandan citizen? When someone is talking about the National Public Sector Procurement Policy, how does it benefit me? Why is it that this evening I should be listening to a conversation on the National Public Sector Procurement Policy?
Yes, why should would this policy benefit the locals? As I've told you that to have a good law, the law must be implementing a policy.
Yes.
So you must have a plan, a good plan. If you have a good plan, you are happy. Now, what is this plan? In this plan, there are intents. What does government want? What is procurement supposed to do? So this policy helps you, a layperson and whoever is looking at this function, to know what is really procurement, what can it do? Because today, when you talk of procurement today in government, in everywhere, some of us are even fear to trying to introduce ourselves as procurement experts, because the perception is corruption, which is not the right thing. Yes, there could be corrupt, some bad tomatoes in the function, in the cadres, but the function has a lot it can offer to a country, to a peasant, a Ugandan. This policy will tell you that this function can help you to achieve 1, 2, 3, 4, which the law may not be able to tell you. The law only tells you the do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
The law tells you, don't do this, do this. If you do this, you do this. If you do this, it's legal. If you don't, so everything becomes do's and don'ts. The policy will tell you this function can help you to have good governance. This policy can help you to use this function to develop your economy. The policy can tell you this function can be used to support innovations. The policy will tell you this function can help you to align your function with international and good practices. And then it will tell you, why do you have to do this? You do this because of this and this. You do this because of this and this.
So some sort of guidelines. They guide you.
It gives you the basis, the principle. It's the foundation.
Yes.
That's why in many cases today, let me give you a simple scenario, simple example, which you find people saying that you've had some leaders, actually even the leaders of this country, saying this is stupid law. Because this law is supposed to help you to achieve your objective. If this law is not helping to achieve your objective, change it. So, but where would you compare this law? Which document are you going to compare to mirror it to? So the only document you can mirror it to would be the policy document. What was the intent of the function? Now this policy tells you the intent of the function is to have better services in this country through properly acquired goods and services where there is value for money. So it gives you the objective. So now once you know the objective, whatever you do should be in line in meeting these objectives. A good example I could give you is that if you look at the law today, if I wanted to buy buses for Ministry of Finance, the law tells me, gives what you must do, the do's and don'ts. One of the do's, that company should have been there for maybe 3 years. That company should have had experience. Now we have developed Kayora. Kayora, you've seen the Kayora. It's a very nice bus. Very nice bus. I'm praying that government gets resources to make mass production. You can't buy Kayora unless the president gives a directive. Now, is that the procurement you want? You want a procurement which will help you to do what you want. Because you want to develop the country, your industry, to create jobs. So this law, the policy will come and tell you, no, you must use procurement to support innovations. So when you are making the law, you put in the law a clause which supports innovation. But if it's something that has been innovation by Ugandans, you don't need experience. You don't need this. All you need is maybe a statement from a competent authority that this thing can perform. And you support your people. That's what South Korea has done. You see the Samsung, most people handle Samsung phones. Samsung started as a small company, making screens. Government using its procurement policy intent, they developed a deliberate policy to buy screens and screens from only Samsung. Today it's one of the national, multinational companies, as you know, and government no longer supports it. So they used procurement. They used the procurement policy, the intent, and made the law. They aligned the law with the policy to make sure that it supports the economy.
Yeah.
So now this policy is bringing those things which we did not see. We only look at the don'ts, don't do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. But the policy will tell you no. Procurement must be used as a policy tool to develop the country. Procurement should be used as a tool to help the women, the youth. Now, once you have that policy intent there, the plan is there. Now you make the law, the reservation scheme, the preference schemes, which align to meet those what? That objective. So the policy is bringing what we call a paradigm shift in public sector procurement. A paradigm shift. We are shifting from
which in one way or the other affects the Ugandan citizens if it's
definitely
not proper.
It's in the positive manner.
Yes.
In the positive manner, because we want to make sure that, for instance, I'll give another scenario today, which is very common in our procurement operations because of the law. You do have not signed a CV. I will not buy from you, but you may be cheaper by 10 billion shillings. But you've not signed the CVs. Consultants have not signed the CVs because the law says so. But should you surrender 10 billion because of this? Can't you get a clarification? Can't you get these people? Is it worth to pay 10 billion shillings more because someone does not say what? If the policy intent was value for money, that you must achieve value for money, then the law must make sure that the criteria, evaluation criteria you develop in the bidding document are looking at criteria that confirm capability to perform. Not saying that because this one doesn't come with a trading license, he has failed, and then the government pays 10 billion shillings more. That is not procurement. That is not procurement.
Okay, now let's.
So it's changing the paradigm shift.
Okay, let us
you're
quickly.
changing the paradigm shift. The policy shows you that you have to change the paradigm shift. How you do business must change.
Must change with the changing times.
With the changing times, and to make sure that you support service delivery. Service delivery.
Let us speak strictly to the national public policy procurement, national
public sector procurement policy.
Procurement policy. When we look at this policy, what are the visions? What is the mission? Let us dive into that.
Definitely, the policy has a number of the policy document. Actually, maybe if the camera can. This is the document you're talking about. The camera, can you pick this document so that people see what you're talking about? This is the document you're talking about.
Yes.
Have they captured it?
Cameraman?
No. No.
But we can see it. We can see this is the policy.
I wanted to show them what is there. Yeah. So this policy has come up on. It has a section.
Yeah.
Where we describe what is the vision, what is the mission. It has 6. Actually, the policy has a number of chapters. We have come to explain what are the vision, what are the vision, and so forth. But one of the key issue from the policy, I can tell you, that it gives what is the goal for, what are we after? We want to ensure that whatever we acquire, government acquires, achieves value for money. It has a goal that whatever we're buying must achieve value for money. And the policy comes out to tell you that value for money can be achieved in many ways, not only through competitive bidding. Competitive bidding is one of the ways. But you can even use direct procurement and get value for money. But because the law says, no, this is this. Yes, you can use direct procurement and get value for money. That's why at one point we were being bashed by the high officers. Why do you buy through a third party and don't go through a manufacturer directly? Because you want the law. I mean, the law has tied you in some way or another. Yeah. So we need to make sure that you understand what is value for. How do I get value for money when in all the acquisition I'm making? And value for money depends. In a defense, value for money may be different. The way how you get value for money in defense, business of defense, It's different from how you get value for money in Ministry of Health. And I always give an example for the ladies, our mothers, when they're expecting. They never look for the cheapest gyno. They never look for the cheapest gyno. So the value for money is there. Who has the best service? Who can give me, where do I have assurance that I'll get this? So the value for money now is moved away from the lowest price. The price is not an issue. So it depends on the value. So even the policy is also bring a new dimension that we must move away from the one size fits all to fit for purpose.
Yeah.
That not everything, not the way how you buy mineral water is not the way how you're going to buy the cattle road. The way how you buy the cattle road may be the way how you're going to buy a solution, an electronic system, a banking system, an electronic procurement system. So the policy has come up with these new suggestion practices, good practices that we must adopt, that governments must adopt to improve and to make sure that service delivery is improved. It's also advocating for flexibility. Where it's necessary, you need to be flexible. Now
You know, when you mentioned service delivery, we have seen that 60% of the national budget goes to the procurement of goods and services. But there's still complaints that sometimes there's less or even no delivery. Where is the missing link when we speak to that? Where is the missing link?
Now that goes to operations. Now that moves us from the policy to the operations. Now that is all about contract management. How do contracts are placed? Do we follow them up to the end? We still have a lot of things to do. Actually, the government has done a lot. PPD has done a lot in terms of improving capacity building, making sure that people know the starting point. Now the end point is the contract management. You can place a contract here, an order, but we still have a gap on what happens at the end side. And that's one of the issues the policies want to address, the issue of governance. We have an issue of governance that we need to address in the current law. For instance, I'll give you an example. A user department today appears in all the steps in the procurement process. I think that's one of the big, what is the policy challenge that we want to address? Because the user department is the one who initiates. They are the people who initiate the procurement. The law says they must be on the evaluation committee. It's the user department who are normally on the contracts committee. It is the user department who are the contract managers. These are some of the challenges that are there in our legal framework, but the policy has mentioned them, that we must address the issue of conflict of interest. So now, when it comes to shortages, you supply but you don't get the item, the ministry. We have an issue of contract management. Do the contract managers know what they are supposed to do? Some people are nominated to be contract managers, to manage the contracts, but they don't know what they're supposed to do. So we have a big challenge of training, capacity building, because these contract managers are also ad hoc people. They're not permanent. Somebody just picked on that today you'll be the contract manager for this project. At times they are not given the training, adequate training. Apart from the big contracts, the big projects where they take some time to train some people, but not all of them. So we have a challenge that you find that a contract may be placed, but the contract manager may not know really what to do. And at the end of the day, he gets a different product from what was ordered. If he was not given enough skills, enough information on what to expect and how to manage that process. So that's still a problem. That is still a problem. But in the policy, all these things have been cited, that we must improve on governance. We must change the business process. We must introduce automation in procurement. That's why we are now trying to pilot EGP, electronic government procurement. These are all policy intents. And I'm so happy that this is one of the policies that the government has come up with, and at the same time, it has even started implementing. So some of the policy intents have been incorporated in amendments that the president has just signed, assented to the new law which is coming on board. So some of the policy intents have been incorporated.
Now, COVID-19 came. It was a situation that had never been experienced before, and over time we did see different complaints: lack of PPEs for the health workers, lack of equipment. This policy, does it sort of play into what we saw or could it have contributed to addressing the current issues that came out of the pandemic in terms of making sure that we have enough equipment, enough PPEs for health workers?
How does the policy contribute to such scenarios? How would this policy contribute to such scenarios? As I've said, it's the current legal framework, by the way, is flexible on things like that, emergencies. It gives provision for emergencies, how to handle procurement in such scenarios. However,
but are they followed, or it gets back to the issue of governance and conflict of interest?
I think whenever there's panic, whenever there's such pandemics, people panic. And at times people make mistakes because of maybe pressures and so forth. But the legal framework has a provision. You want to improve on this on the framework. The current legal framework has a provision for urgent procurements, for emergencies, when there are calamities like this. The current PPDA Act has provisions for that. But when we go back to the policy, as I've said, that the policy has good intents, which are going to help us to improve on the procurement processes. If we automated, for instance, if now that we automate the policy, one of these intent is to automate procurement. So we introduce electronic procurement. If we had electronic procurement in some of these institutions, ordering would not be as difficult as it is today, because you'd be doing this electronically. You don't need to leave your home, your business desk to come and tender in the Ministry of Health. You just sit on your desk, log on, because now, as we are now piloting the EGP, Government of Uganda is piloting on the electronic government procurement. Once if these policy intents are put in practice, such scenarios of urgencies would be made much easier. For a peasant to register, you have to register from your desk. You don't need to go to PPDA, to Ministry of Finance to do what. No, you stay in your business and register online. These are some of the positives in the policy, but which government is already implementing now, putting in practice. And we believe that by 1st July, we are going to have a number of ministries being enrolled on this EGP. So these are some of the policy intents. But if you bring them in, if we had already implemented these good practices much earlier, if the policy had come in much earlier and we implemented these policies much earlier, then we would not have a lot of problems like we have today. Because with e-procurement, many processes will be simplified and made easier. That's what I can say.
All right, now that brings me now to the question of how does the NPSPP, what contribution does it make to the economy? Something that, this is a policy, but what contribution does it make to the economy?
If you look at Chapter 5 in this document, Chapter 5 of the policy advocates for using this function as a socio-economic policy tool. How? We want people to start looking at procurement as something, it's no longer, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, if we are using 60% of their budget going through this function, then if you manage it smartly, you are going to get more. If you did a good job in procurement, instead of doing 10 kilometers, you may do 20. If instead of getting 100 PPPs, you may get 200 if you did it smartly. So if we improved, if we adopted E, the cost of doing business is going to go down. Access to business information will be much easier. Transparency will be easier for the Auditor General. It will be easier for him to audit. So many things will come up. But now if I go to the other area of using procurement as a social and economic tool, this is where we are going to introduce the policy advocates for introduction of sustainable procurement. In fact, I'm glad to inform you that in the amended bill, which is coming, the President has assented to, we have a clause on sustainable procurement. Sustainable procurement has 3 pillars, key pillars. One is environment, one is social, and one is economic. How does this policy, what does it say about the economic? Under the economic, we are saying that we need to use procurement as a tool to support SMEs, to support local businesses, to support the women, to support the youth. Yes, the current law has these provisions, but the policy has brought them, in the policy it's well documented, so that if we had this policy much earlier, then our reservation scheme today would have many products than it has today.
Yeah.
Because this has we have about, I think, 10 products we've reserved. But if you had this policy had come much earlier, I think we'd have over 50 products. We would have over 50 products. So that's one of the ways how this policy can contribute to the economy. On the environment side, on the aspect of environment, it advocates that we must use this function to protect nature, to protect biodiversity. So if we are going to protect nature, if Minister of Education is going to buy furniture, it should be aware that as they specify the furniture, if you go ahead and say we want furniture made of mahogany, how many trees has government ever planted of mahogany? That will be the first question. So if you say I want to buy desks for using mahogany, you know that your government, you're contributing to the destruction of the environment. So the policy is very clear that as we develop specifications, take note of the environment. Don't specify that you want mahogany as your furniture. No, it's very dangerous. Unless if there are forests that have been planted, but this is not even feasible today. We don't have mahogany. Yeah. Those are all endangered species in Uganda. So you must be very careful as you do the specifications. So this is how the policy is going to help on the environment. That we are going to even to change the way how we specify for timber, for furniture. We want to protect the nature. If you're going to use nature, then you must use nature that is from renewable resources. Promote furniture from renewable sources. For instance, want people who are supplying timber to government to cut them from the planted forests. Not just go and buy any kind of timber from anywhere. Because if you do that, you are promoting
environmental degradation. All right. Now, value for money, is it one of the goals of the NPSPP? Would you say it's one of your key goals?
It is the main goal. Actually, what the police has done now, we have separated the ends, what we want to achieve, from the means. How to achieve the means. The current law talks of the principles. Value for money, transparency, competition, fairness. We realize that these principles conflict each other.
Yeah.
So the police has been very careful. It has separated what do we want. It has picked out what we want. And that's the end. And then how do we... The others are the hows. Procurement is not about competition. No. Procurement is about service delivery. Getting services, works that have value for money, but you achieve service delivery. The competition is the means to do that. So that's why I was saying that by the way you can do direct procurement and get value for money. It depends on how you did the planning. Well, the issue of planning, for instance, planning in the policy, in our policy document, we have explained that planning is so crucial. In many government projects, procurement people are brought on board when the planning has been done. They are not brought the finished product. When all the costs, the problems have been embedded, by the time these things come to PDU, you cannot do anything much. You become clerical. But procurement is not supposed to be clerical. Actually, one of the paradigm shift, procurement is supposed to be proactive, not reactive. The policy advocates for proactive, not reactive, not acting to, not gatekeepers. This one wants this. Procurement should not even inquire, why do you want it?
So are there lessons you picked from the COVID-19 pandemic moving forward? Could you speak to us on that?
What are the lessons that we picked from COVID-19? One of the key lessons is that we need to move very, very fast to automate. We need to move very, very fast to automate. The good news that Minister of Finance and Accountant General's Office, the Accountant General is spearheading the e-procurement reforms, electronic government procurement reforms. We are working with the PPDA, our regulator. We are working with the NITA-U, Minister of ICT. This, we need to automate very fast, because if we had automated much earlier, I think some of the challenges, especially that we faced with the procurement, wouldn't have been met. Two, I think another thing that we need to, another lesson that I can pick from this COVID challenges, I think we need to move very fast from the issue of, we need to adopt very fast the issue of supply chain, to understand our because today we are only looking at the purchasing, the first tier, and yourself as a government. The purchasing, the procurement concept, and the supply chain concept. Today you need to move much. You need to know your supply chain. How do you manage it? If there's a pandemic like this, your products are coming from China, from Germany, from what? How do you respond? Do you know that supply chain? Mm-hmm. How do you manage the supply chain? If there are supply chain challenges, how do you mitigate against these risks? That's why the policy is also advocating that we must have a risk management register. We must have a procurement risk management tool, manual. So these are some of the paradigm shifts we are introducing, which we used not to think about much earlier. But now with these challenges, we are now saying that each PDE, each procurement and disposal entity should have a procurement risk management strategy. Ministry of Health, what are the products you buy? Do you know the risks, the challenge, the risks associated with these products? Assuming they are close downs, how do we manage? Do you have local suppliers? So another lesson is that we must expedite, we must support local content. Local content.
Yes.
That's local content is under the economic pillar. I forgot to talk about it. When you talk of sustainable procurement, the third pillar is the economic, and that's where we talk of local content. And how is local content being we already have local content under the current law, but the policy explains better to show you what must be done. And so we need to support our local manufacturers. Local content is not about supporting expensive, poor quality things. No.
Is there some bit of strategy that you're putting in place to see that local content, this policy does support local content? We've seen different complaints where huge projects are awarded to foreigners and the local people here, the local service providers do not, benefit from that. And in the end, the revenue is taken back to their countries. Is there something that you're putting in place, this policy is putting in place to regulate that, to show that maybe if a company is coming through to do some project here, can it allow the local content here, local service providers to be part of that and also benefit in a way?
Yes, I think even before the coming on board of this policy, there was, when they amended the law in 2014, we incorporated the provision of preference schemes and reservation schemes. Well, now the policy is very clear on that we must support local production. We must support local production. So we are, right now, Ministry of Finance and PPDA have in place a local content implementation strategy, which we are now trying to implement. Actually, the reservation scheme, the reservation guidelines are a product of that strategy. The current reservation guidelines, which were developed by PPDA, we are working with the PPDA. I remember I chaired that committee, and we came up with reservation guidelines, the local content implementation strategy. So it is the policy is proactive and saying yes, we must, but it gives guidance that as we look at supporting the locals, take note of their capacities, take note of how can you develop them. So it's a bigger thing. It's bigger because we need to move down and do studies to know who are these people we want to support. Actually, that's why today we are working with the Ministry of Finance, PPDA has been working with the ITC, International Trade Center. There's a project which is called She Trades. For instance, they've been doing a study for us on the women businesses to see how can we support the women. Because some of the policy intents to implement that policies needs a lot of resources. We may not have everything at a go, but there's the intent, there's the intention. We are moving towards that. So there's the intent. So there's a local content implementation strategy, and which you're already trying to look at. We want to make sure that the youth want to know who are the youth in this country. What kind of business are they doing?
And how can they be supported?
How can we support them?
Yes.
So these are the studies we're trying to
and more or less, is it sustainable? After starting it, is it sustainable?
That's why I'm saying that the strategy has the element of financing these people, building capacity in terms of management, because most of these SMEs, these youth women, they are family-owned businesses. They have challenges, management challenges. So you don't only think of giving them money, showing them where to go, but they must also have the managerial skills. Can they fill a bidding document? And that's what She Trades ITC has been supporting us. They've been working with PPDA to support a study on these women. How can they respond to government tender documents? But then as government, we need to look at, can we simplify these bid documents to make them simpler for the youth? Can we even translate them in local languages? But that's the work of PPDA. But we need, as Minister of Finance, we need to help PPDA to get the money. Do they have the money? So it's a big thing, and there are many stakeholders that have to come in the play. Right now, we are looking at integrating those aspects of sustainable procurement. We can't work alone. We are trying to. We are now working with the United Nations Environment to see how can we start piloting on some of the products that can be used as a starting point to buy products that have limited impact on the environment. So implementing that policy, there's a lot. We need to involve the strategy, but the strategy is money. And we have now, like this COVID is affecting the income of the country.
Yeah.
We are going to have a challenge of implementing this policy. So, but the intents are there, and they are good.
All right. Now, to the audience, you probably heard the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act 2003. And we know that it puts in place that ensures that follows each procurement. We want to understand what this process is and how it is linked to the NPSPP.
The process of what?
The process of, the Public Procurement Disposal Public Assets Act 2003 does put in place a process that should be followed in each procurement. We want to understand this process and how it is linked to NPSPP. What is the link there?
Well, maybe what is the link between the law and the policy?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I want to know.
Yeah.
As I've said, that policies are high-level documents which shows you the intent. Where do you want to go? You want to build a house. You have 5 toilets, you have 7 bedrooms, you have 3 corridors, you're going to have these sinks, you're going to have these things, you're going to have a staircase and the escape route. So the policy explains why you must have what? A fire escape. The policy explains why you must do ABCD. So now the current law was developed without that policy document. But they were policy statements. They had some, but as maybe what I can say is that developing a policy is much more difficult than developing a law. A law is very easy. What do? You only need to go to the UN website. There's what we call the United Nations UNISTRO model law. You go and download that model law, customize it. So within 3 months you have a law. Your biggest task is now to customize. The policy, there is no model policy. There's no model procurement policy. Actually, by the time we went to start developing this policy, there were very few countries that had procurement policies. In Africa, I think we only came across Tanzania was trying to do it. South Africa had something. But when we looked at them as procurement professions, we realized that they are really not what a good policy should look like. So it was not easy. So starting something, actually, our policy was developed by our resources. Our people, the Ugandans developed this NPSPP. Ugandans, consultants, Ugandan practitioners, consultants, PPDA, people from PPDA, the academicians, we had doctors. So it is a very nice document. So ideally, the current law reflects some of the issues that are in the policy. Because as I've said, the policy is not a new thing. What it's doing is giving the intent and why you must do certain things. So it captures all the things that are in the law, in the policy. They're explained in the policy. Why do you need to have an evaluation? Why do you have to have a complaint mechanism, review mechanism? They're in the policy. But in the policy, it gives you what should be the best practice. For instance, complaints handling mechanism. There's been an argument, should the regulator be involved in the complaints review mechanism? I think at the beginning, when we were coming up with this, there was no procurement policy. There was no policy. It was okay. Yes, it was okay. But now Minister of Finance has a department for procurement policy. We have moved ahead. I think now we can improve on the governance, separate the regulator from the complaints handling mechanism. But by the time that the law was developed at that time, it was okay. But now, the policy is very clear that the best practice is having actually one player. One player should be that's the best practice. But you can't go, right now we had 3 tiers. You can't say you go to one. So what we've done, we've gone to the two. In the current law, the amended law, which is coming 1st July, very soon, because the president has already assented. We are removing one tier. That's a good practice. But doesn't mean that was bad. At the time, by the time the law was developed, it was okay because there was no tribunal. So you couldn't have a gap. So the authority had to do that role. Now, in 2014, when we created a tribunal, the two players were there. Now that the tribunal has been there for some time, we are leaving that responsibility to them. So we are moving slowly, slowly by slowly, like a child. It starts by crawling, then struggles to walk, then starts running. So by the time the procurement reforms came in, we couldn't have all these things in place. So the current law, we need to make sure that the law is in line with the policy. That is our target. But you can't do that in one go, because there are so many, it has a lot of implication. So we are going to move slowly by slowly. We introduce some of the things slowly by slowly. Because when you're talking of a policy, you're looking at 10-year policy. It's not a 2-year thing. Yeah. It's a long-term thing. So we shall go on improving, changing the law to meet the policy intent. But as of now, the current law, the one which you've improved, which you have amended, has a number of policy intents being incorporated. But not all of them, but definitely, not all of them. But with time, we shall make sure that with the time, we go on improving, incorporating, so that we can make sure that this function enables government to achieve its objectives. That is service delivery.
Now, you actually did mention about corruption. You know, every single time someone talks about the procurement process, it is synonymous with procurement process. This policy, is it sort of going to provide guidelines on how to address that moving forward? There's corruption, there's embezzlement, you know, and the like issues that do hinder the different service providers. When
you look at this national public sector procurement policy, it has 7 pillars. It defines the system. You know, procurement is a system. It's not a one-man show. It's a system, and there are many players. So we have the policy pillar, we have the legal pillar, we have the human resource, we have the market. But where does corruption come in? It comes under the integrity and accountability, pillar number 7. So the policy is very clear that if you want to improve, actually even under sustainable procurement, when you talk of sustainability, you can't sustain corruption. So in some documentation literature, they talk of 4 pillars of sustainable procurement, and the 4th pillar is governance. So we need the policy advocates that we must really make sure we improve on governance and minimize, create a conducive environment. That's why we're advocating for automation in procurement. Because once you automate, for instance, one of the major challenges providers have with the procurement people is that they tamper with their bidding documents. Now, if the policy is saying, let's automate, and the government has said, yes, we are automating, and the government of Uganda, through Minister of Finance, has said you are going to invest, they are ready. Accountant General has come up very clear that you look for money to automate. So he's implementing the policy intent, and we are now piloting in 10 ministries, by the way. We had a hitch up at the beginning. But now, how does this policy intent implementation help in corruption? As I've told you, there will be no more saying that my document has been tampered with. If you're the bidder now there, and you want to bid with the Minister of Finance, you sit on your computer, fill your document, click a button. The document goes to Minister of Finance. You don't have to come to me, David. I'm the head of PDU. Please accept my bid. No, you don't need me.
What the person see the name and say, okay, I know this person. And
you don't need, what I'm saying, you can comfortably stay in your home. Fill a bidding document. Submit. Or if you want to register, you sit in your office, your home. Go online.
So you believe online platforms are going to address the corruption tendencies that we are seeing in the procurement processes?
Corruption is a big monster.
Yes.
It's a big monster. It's beyond, it's all about human. It's much more than law. It's much more than than paying somebody 50 million, because I think even those who are paid 50 million per month may be more corrupt than those who are paid 1 million. So it's about the individual. But what can government do? Government cannot totally eliminate, but can control.
Yes.
So that's why I'm saying that the policy intent is to automate procurement. And government has come up very clear that it's going to support automation. Actually, this implementation of electronic government procurement in government, right now, government has decided to, we had used development partners funds to get a foreign bidder. Through Minister of Finance, through Minister of ICT, we identify Ugandans who came up with a local solution. And through Minister of Finance, under the Innovation Fund, the government is doing a lot of things we should don't know, that the public is not aware. Through the Innovation Fund, help these people. When we tested the system, we found it was better than the other system we're going to buy from Greece. And as we talk today, government has bought that system. So if you introduce such a system, as I've given one element, how it is going to serve what? On integrity. There will be no more tampering of documents. Now, you won't have to run from where you are to go to Minister of Finance, Minister of Education, Minister of Defense. You want to buy pre-qualification document. You register once. You'll be registered what? Once. And once you're registered in the system, you can access businesses in all government entities as long as they're on the system. That's why the government is trying to expedite this process. It has put in effort. But why am I bringing all this? These are all policy intents that are being implemented by government. Yeah. That's what I'm saying, that I'm so happy that the policy intents that we came up with are already being adopted and being implemented by the government of Uganda.
You know, Mr. David Chinji, you do bring out an aspect that I believe could be a concern of the people. The fact that some could be eliminated, you know, people living with disabilities. I mean, how are you, for instance, going to address that?
If you look at the local content implementation strategy, we have identified those groups, that there are people who need support.
Yes.
So what we are now doing as
government... And
they
also need to take part in the procurement process.
What we are now doing right now, I gave you a scenario that we are working with the ITC, International Trade Center, on the element of women.
Yes.
Now we are trying to work, we are looking for resources to get someone who can help us to identify who are these people with disabilities, who are disadvantaged. What kind of business are they in? Because they may be in businesses where we don't go as a government. We need to know who are they, what kind of business are they in, so that can they participate in this public sector procurement? Can they? So that's now where we are. We are trying to identify. We are working with PPD. We are working with Ministry of Trade. You've heard Ministry of Trade has the BUBU policy. Actually, this sustainable procurement is one of the arms to support BUBU policy. It's actually supporting BUBU policy,
which is local content.
Which is local content. So, likewise, when you talk of local content, they are people with disabilities, but we need to know who are they. You can't just say that, okay, 10% will go to the people with this what? If you don't do a study and know who they are, it can be abused. South Africa did it, they have what they call the BEE, Black Empowered Economic Empowerment Policy. They didn't do a study and ended up having the whites picking people using what they call, funding people who are not actually the owners. So we need to be very careful. That's why we are saying we are going to do a study. We are planning to do a study. We are lucky that for women, the women, ITC came in and helped us. For the youth, we want to work with the UBOS or any other partner to see how we can identify these people. And then be able to say that, okay, that's 5% be allocated to the youth. But otherwise now you can't do it. It may be dangerous. You can allocate the 5% when they cannot even take one. So it becomes a challenge. In Kenya, they tried it and it backfired because they had not done the study. So we want to do a study first. But we are... To
cater for all categories of people, to see that they benefit from this
process. And make sure that we know who they are.
Yeah.
And if possible, even advise them. Because they what they call procurement marketing. You can sell your idea to somebody to take it so that they can become later on your supplier. That's procurement marketing. We can do that. Those are things we are now looking at. What can we do? But it's not easy. Now this COVID coming in, we can't meet people. The speed at which we've been moving has been curtailed. We are 10% in offices. We have challenges. NITA has not finished all the what they call the background what? The whole country has not been networked with the internet, and the speed has been affected by the cause of this COVID. So there are challenges that we have, but the intent is there. The goodwill is there.
The goodwill is there.
The goodwill
now,
is
for
there.
the service providers that are watching us today, why is it important for them to fully understand this policy?
It's very important for the service provider to understand this policy. You know, at times the service providers, the bidders there, they help us a lot to whip us. I can tell you frankly that at times government slow because nobody's pushing. But the moment the people who are pushing, you start to open up your eyes and it's becoming alert. Government has done a lot of things. I'm not saying that it hasn't done a lot of things, but at times we may be slow. But only if the provider is aware that there must be a reservation scheme where we as printers must benefit, and they start agitating and pushing us, maybe in a 2 months' time they'll be on the reservation scheme. If they sit back, it may take us some time. That's why you find that on the reservation scheme, providers that were alert, that were ready, were the first one to be incorporated. The steel industry, when it went out there, the steel industry were saying, no, we must benefit from the SGR. We have the capacity. We went there, visited them, they were paying taxes. They had people that were, they are giving us voluntarily even their information. And now, when they were put on the reservation scheme, we've also seen benefits. That their production has gone up. Taxes to your has increased. Because they knew when they heard that there is this possibility, they fought for it. So it's very important for these providers to know. We are making motorcycles. Why are you buying Hondas from what? From Japan. Organize yourself. When you push, government moves faster. So they need to know what this policy is all about. They need to know that, well, if government has this intent, why is it not doing it? So that's why it's very important for the public there to know, the academicians to know, so that we can help this country, so that we can implement this, execute this policy. By executing this, some of the things, we're also helping, we're not actually helping ourselves, we are even helping our children and grandchildren. Because when you support local content, when you support sustainable procurement, you're supporting local content, you're supporting strategic sourcing, you're supporting your local manufacturer to produce. And these are the people who are going to give jobs to our children and grandchildren.
Now, as we conclude, someone could have seen you raise the policy app, the book that contains all the details of this policy. But where can they get this information about this policy? Is it online? Is it available on a website? How can we access it, for instance?
This policy is online now. So now means website, www.finance.go.ug. You click under publications, www.go.ug. Then you go look for publications. We'll put it there. And
better, before I also let you go this evening, for the other category, special category of people that I pointed out, how are you going to ensure that they have access to this information? Are there some sort of strategies that you're putting in place, or different moves here and there that you're doing to see that people living with disabilities can at least have some knowledge of this policy?
And one of the reasons why I'm here is to disseminate.
Yes.
Now I'm disseminating a picture
to those watching us.
Those who are watching us. There are many people who cannot watch it, who are not on NTV. We have other programs where we are going to visit their associations. We know most of these disadvantaged groups have associations. We are going to work there physically. We are a team. We are a team of people. I have a team behind me, and we are determined to sell this idea, to promote. We are working, as I said, we are not working alone. There's the authority, the regulator is there. They are our part of Ministry of Finance, the regulator. We're working with them. We are working with the Ministry of Trade. We are working with different partners. And we're also working with the academicians. We are working with the academicians. But we intend to visit, because this is now one niche I'm now approaching. There's another niche that we need to use using another forum.
Yes.
So we have a strategy to meet each and every those key stakeholders in where they are found.
All right, as we finally come to the end of this discussion on procurement this evening, any last key point that you feel people shouldn't forget? At least it should be the thing people take away from this discussion this evening.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted also to inform the general public is that this policy has brought a paradigm shift. It's going to bring a paradigm shift in the way how we do public sector procurement. We want to walk the talk. Don't talk of value for money when you cannot practice it. Talk about value for money and can be seen. We are determined to make sure that the policy intents are put in place. That's why, as I've said, come 1st July, the number of government institutions that are going to be enrolled on electronic government procurement. Please, bidders out there, take note. When you are called upon to register, run, because very soon you'll not be able to access government procurements if you've not registered on the EGP, on the EGP registration. It's free of charge for the time being, where we are piloting. But after some time, you have to pay for it. You have to pay for it. But even the payment you pay will be less than what you've been paying when you've been running across all government institutions. Where we are piloting, we've made it free of charge. Those who are suppliers of Ministry of Finance, KCCA, suppliers of CAA, suppliers of Ministry of Water, where we are piloting, run and register on the EGP system. Run and register, because you may miss out in government procurements. We are giving you this opportunity because we are piloting, but after some time, you have to pay to register. But definitely it will be less than what you've been paying, because you'll be paying once. You'll be paying once. So businessmen there, practitioners there, out there, help our providers, the head PDUs, help our practitioners. Let us help them to benefit from these reforms, because there are many that are coming. Many reforms are coming. Let's be proactive. These days we are actually even using electronic purchase order notifications. We no longer want the bidders to come and rush to a head PDU. What is my purchase order? No. Once the order has been approved on the system, electronically you are notified. You don't need to go and beg for a purchase order today. And the providers there with our electronic purchase orders, if you're not paid on time, please notify Accountant General's office. Notify Accountant General's office.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. David Chiji, Commissioner of Public Procurement in the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, joining us this evening to talk about some of the issues on the dissemination of the National Public Sector Procurement Policy. What has come out clear is that a proper procurement process does contribute to proper service delivery, hence the development of a country, and all these processes can actually be sustainable if the right guidelines are put in place that this policy is actually contributing to. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you as well for joining us this evening. I've been your moderator, Sandra Twinovideo.